didn't act like I have these great ambitions to make a career of it, but um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's such a huge man. It's totally the most important skill out there today. I mean, there's no other skill out there right now that allows you this much power over stuff. I mean, this is why if you were to ask any developer, they all want to create their own companies because they know that they can do it on their own. And where you're compared to like, man, if you were to create like a restaurant or something, holy smokes, or you're a cocktail waitress. So if you were to create like a bar or a restaurant, you'd need like $500,000 just to get started. So risky, so difficult,
yeah.
and you have very little power. But coding, you can whip up the code on your own, and if you do that, then boom, you have a company right there, low risk and amazing because you can
I
do
love
whatever
how
you.
you say whip up like it's like so easy.
It's relatively easy. I mean, this is why most coders are have dreams and ambitions to create their own company. There's a very like again, if you were to create your own computer, like let's say I were to make my own Apple company, man, that would require like 20, 30, $50 million of seed investment, and software wise, completely different. It's not even the same story at all. So that's why a lot of people do create their own companies. They, create video games. You see independent games all the time, independent apps all the time, and these are the things that really take off, and it doesn't require much investment, so it's a big deal. Cool. Anyone else want to share, or even you? Any other thoughts?
No, I mean, I'm just super into it, so I just kind of want to see where it goes from here.
Yeah.
I'm hooked as of last week, so
And you'd really be surprised at the people that we get. So I have like makeup artists come to us. We've had one of our students is a baggage handler, one's a
yeah.
plumber. So it's really diverse, and you'd be surprised at how people who you wouldn't expect to go into tech are
Yeah.
trying to do tech. So it's a, and now you're talking with that's another
Yeah.
one. That's awesome.
I get that. I see.
Specifically as a woman, you have a very sizable advantage. A lot of companies are trying to fulfill quotas.
Oh,
Basically, if you want to be honest about it, what it is that if most like 9 out of 10 like developers are male,
yeah.
and right now it just doesn't look good for whatever reason. So if they can grab a woman and put them in their stock, then they're gonna like put that woman front and center because it
I,
just looks more diverse.
that's
And
surprising. I'm so used to it looking like used to be.
huh?
Sorry. I'm used to being a woman and having it be a disadvantage in like male dominated stuff, so it's kind of interesting. And then I think you made the comment last time that it's like this is one field where it doesn't matter what you look like or who you are or
Yeah.
whatever, because it's matter like what you can deliver on.
Yeah.
So it's kind of surprising, but okay. I mean, I'm glad that it
Yeah.
benefits me to be a woman. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really great time to be a woman in the tech field because everyone just wants that diversity because then they can put a woman in a picture and go like, there we go, we broke the streak.
it's a girl.
Yeah. And women bring a really, okay, there's a downside to homogeny. And one of the downsides is that men have a tendency to think similar and women have a tendency to think a certain way.
Mhm.
So like one thing before this came out, as if you notice, like when I don't know how if you guys remember earlier software like in the 2000s, but back in the 2000s, software was really dry, is really boring and difficult to use, and that was because coding was more difficult. And because it was more difficult, it appealed to the more highly logical males.
Mhm.
And these males didn't have intuition, they didn't care about what the users felt, and so on and so forth. But as coding started to become more accessible, it started allowing people with a more like emotional side, I guess you want to say,
EQ, yeah.
field. And now we have really great apps that are super intuitive, they're fun to use. Whereas if you were to just look, 30, 20, 30 years ago, writing a software that was fun was the last thing on a coder's mind, because these people, like, we were like super dorks, and you know,
Or
in these like women who may care about things that are very different, helps accelerate the industry in a very different way. So like one of my students at UCLA, she loves the visual side of development. And so for her to bring in her flavor and bring in what, like, bring in what would be fashionable, what looks good, what feels good to a user, is something that's very special, that a lot of men are going to struggle more to reach. And so for women, they may have a little bit higher intuition on those, areas than a very highly logical male. So that brings in something that is very like powerful for your end. And so, like for instance, one of my students is just got a job offer to Fashion Nova. I don't know anything about Fashion Nova, but
yeah,
imagine that you like shot that Fashion Nova and then you became a developer there. Then what happens is that you can bring in, like, what you like, because you're like the primary audience, but my student is a male, so he can deliver on what they ask for, but he can't come up with the ideas and say, hey, you know what, you don't realize it, but this is something that's going to really appeal to us, and I'm your target audience, and I have that insight that you don't have.
yeah.
So women are really special in this, and I think you should not underestimate your contribution to the industry and what you can do to help change the way software moves.
Thanks, because yeah, that's the part that I found appealing to me. Was it's like I often open apps and programs, and I'm like, oh, I wish that this was like this and that was like that.
Mhm.
That's kind of like what
Yeah,
I'm looking into, but we'll see. I don't want to make like grand.
yeah, of course, of course.
Of,
And this is the creativity that software brings, because it's allowing you to design a way to interact with a computer in a way that's very natural. And I think TikTok's such a great example of it. I mean, I use TikTok I don't even use TikTok that much anymore, but man, when I first used it, I could not stop scrolling through those damn videos, and I'm like, god damn, they are so good at getting us addicted to social media. And nowadays it's just so intuitive, nowadays so natural, that it's really changed the dynamic of the world. I mean, look at Tinder. Even Tinder, like, I know people give it shit, but the whole point is that it's so addictive, it is so powerful and convenient and easy to use, that it has changed the dynamic of the dating world. And
yeah,
that's really the opportunity that we have to do software.
yeah.
So it's cool.
I want to make everything about me, but I could totally like go into all this with you.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
So Edward is saying he is interested in Python for Excel. That is a huge, huge thing. One of the things that I remember talking to this girl, and she was saying that she spent 2 hours a day cleaning up her Excel sheets before she would actually do her literal work. And that boggled my mind, because if you count it out, 2 hours out of 8 hours in a day is a quarter of your year. And if you count a quarter of a year, I mean, let's say that she gets paid $80,000. The company's spending $20,000 for her to sort her data. Now, let's flip that. Let's imagine that a programmer came in and is like, oh, I can get this data sorted for you in like 10 minutes. So once you get it in the morning, boom, it's ready to go, and you don't have to put any time into it. That saved, just in terms of one analyst, that saved the company $20,000. And so the mathematics is quite easy. And that's why developers are so important, because it's really easy to justify this developer with just 1 week of work saved the company $20,000 a year per analyst. And those numbers are astronomical. And so that's the one thing I always like to emphasize with all you guys. Really remember that when you're going into development, you don't have to become a software developer. You can fuse whatever experience you have into becoming something greater. So one of my students was in finance, and then he learned coding, and then now he's doing like analytics, data analytics at Airbnb. So what it is that Airbnb saw him and said, oh
Black nigger sex nigger ching chong ling ling day taco eater cotton picker monkey oaga booga nigger balls nigger sex nigger faggot. Gay nigger faggot queers need to die. Fuck George Floyd.
I'm sorry. Can you say that again, please, sir? What was that?
But yeah, it's yeah. So you would be able to combine your talents in ways that you'd be surprised because, so for instance, cocktail waitress. How does cocktail waitress combine with coding, right? So the advantage she has, one besides being a woman, is that she's good with people. So technical people, I don't know if you ever met a technical person, but they generally are socially awkward people.
You can say it. They're on the spectrum. You can say
Yeah. And so you come in and you become like, hey, I can deal with clients. I can do this. I can deal with other coders. That puts you on a pedestal because you become something different than everyone else. So, and again, another one of my students, he, his dream was to get into the video game industry, but he couldn't break in. So then he realized I had to have some technical skills in order to get in. Then he learned technical skills. Then when he applied into the video game industry, they saw him. They're like, hey, you know what you can do? You can work as a person that mediates in between the community and coders, because coders don't like to talk to the communicate. Coders don't like to talk to the community. So he was the mediator. And then his next job was, because he understood video games, and then because he understood tech and sales and was able to, communicate with people, he went to tech project management for Epic Games. So these are the stepping stones you can take. And you want to leverage every part of who you are, your talent, into becoming into your next job. So it's much more diverse than just, working in the tech industry. You have a lot of openings of what you can do, and it's really so immense. So it's wonderful that you guys are all here. I'm really proud of you guys. I mean, a lot of you guys could have been, every single one of us could have been watching TV, watching Netflix, but you guys all chose to kind of improve your life in some sort. And that's really, I think, what's special. A lot of people just rather sit back and do nothing when they feel like, they're not happy about their lives. But for you guys to, spend, an hour today is a real big deal. And so for that, you guys should even just be proud of yourself just for that, because I always feel that a lot of people need to reframe their concept of what success is. Success oftentimes is just showing up. A lot of times don't realize that success starts from the participation award. People shit on the participation award, but it actually means big deal, because a lot of people don't participate. A lot of people don't show up, but you guys are here, and that is really a huge difference, and be proud of yourself for that regard. Okay, so any questions before we get started? No? Okay. All right, so to give a quick intro to who I am, my name is AJ. I'm a software consultant for about 15 years. I was working for one of the top consulting firms in the country. We were one of some of our clients, and it was like AAA, Honda, Allergan, which is like a huge pharmaceutical company, Fox. These are all just some of our companies. And what I was doing was, as a consultant, is you have to learn really quickly the technology of whatever industry you're going into, because when you're going to a client, you don't get to pick the technology they're using. And so one of the things I learned really quickly was how to learn very quickly. That is one of the biggest skills I learned while being in a job field. So it's one of those things where, a company will ask me, do you know this technology? And I could easily just say, no, I don't, but don't worry, I can learn it really quickly, and then turn around and bill them $200 to $300 an hour. So once you get to a certain threshold, you actually don't need to have experience anymore. But to get to that threshold is really the challenge, and what we want to train you guys to do. After being in the field, about 8 years ago, I started going to education. I felt that I learned a lot about how to learn, so that I wanted to kind of share that with everyone else. And so that's where I created Popcorn Robot. So Popcorn Robot is basically the total idea of, if I had to teach you guys coding using all the modern techniques, all the modern everything that we know, then how would I do it? Because I also teach at UCLA as well. So I am very well aware of how the traditional university system works. but there's a lot of limitations and a lot of things are very outdated. And so what I wanted to do is see, okay, what would happen if we created an education system from scratch and how would it work? And that's what Popcorn Robot is, okay? So that's kind of the little nutshell of who I am, who I worked for when I was working in the industry, and what I'm doing right now. I'm teaching at UCLA and Popcorn Robot, and that's kind of my whole shtick right now, okay? Any questions? Awesome. Okay, all right, so real quickly, so let's talk about what we're doing here. So the whole thing is that we are, let me get this separated. Oh. All right. And I'll give you this link as well. All right. Okay, so the whole thing about what this world is doing right now is the separation between man and computer is getting increasingly blurry. So I want to really emphasize something. I don't know if you guys have heard of the whole AI revolution, but it is insane. The whole AI revolution is changing everything. And we are now even questioning what it means to be a human, because now we're getting computers to generate things that we thought was limited to only humans, and creativity and all that stuff. So we are really pushing the boundaries of what is a computer and what is a human. And ChatGPT, like Edward was saying, is totally at the forefront of it. Midjourney and DALL-E, which are image generators, are another forefront. And let me tell you, these guys just got started. This was version 1. Version 1 is usually awful compared to what it's going to be like in 5 years. So you buckle up. Like, let me tell you, all the whole Web 3.0 stuff with, Meta Universe and crypto, I kind of think that stuff wasn't the 3.0. The next 3.0 is the AI stuff, and that is coming really full steam. So where we're at right now is AI is changing everything. And so it's going to be an accelerant on many regards. So you guys want to get on as quickly as possible, understand how to use AI, because there's going to be a different class of people who understand how to use the AI and people who don't. And you want to be on a raft that is with the AI, because let me tell you, things are really changing and it's really fast. So last class, we kind of explored the fundamentals of coding. What we were really working on was making computers speak to us, and then also how to remember things. So now we're going to actually create something that helps us have a dialogue with computers. And so I kind of want you when you're thinking of when we're making our apps, try to envision it as like we're kind of making little living beings. So first it could talk, then it can remember stuff. Now we're going to try to get where it can listen to us and respond to us. So that's the whole goal for today, okay? And so what we're trying to do is getting computers to interact with us. So that's why, this is, of course, not even ChatGPT level, but that's kind of what ChatGPT can do, is that it can listen to what we're saying, compute something, and respond. And so that is we're doing like a poor man's version of a ChatGPT, so to speak. Okay. So what you guys can do is go to the link and start the exercises. So this kind of gives you a little review of what we did on the last class. And so go ahead, start coding, and we'll get started. Let me know when you guys are done. Just type it into the chat, and then we'll know when to move on, okay? If you guys have any questions about how to get started with the replit and all that stuff, let me know, and I can help you out.
I wasn't here last class. Where exactly do we go for the exercise?
Okay, so click on the link. I'll help you out, and Jimmy. Can you click on this link and then scroll down to the exercises review? And then let me know when you're there. Once you're there, click on the replit link, which is right here. And then I want you to create an account. So that's going to be your first goal. Create an account, and then we're going to get to this page.
Okay. What do I do next?
Okay, did you create an account?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, all right, so Jamie, pay attention as well, in case you're not there. When you get to this screen, you want to click on the create button. There's also another create button up here as well, but just a create button, the plus. That's going to give you this screen.
Oh, okay.
Then you're going to select Python right here, and then click create REPL. So you don't have to do anything with the title, just press create REPL, and that will give you what you're looking for. Okay, so just click on Python for the template, and then create REPL, and then that's going to give you what looks like this. Just like this. Okay, and let me know when you get there.
I'm there.
All right.
So am I.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Now for today, we actually don't need this files tab. So if you wanted to, you can use the arrow to kind of drag and close that window. So you just have the main.py window and a console. So the way it works is that when we write code, we're just writing text. So that's a crazy thing. Code is just text. There's really nothing fancy about it. It's like a notepad text, right? So the first line of code we're going to have you write is coming from here, print hello world. So you can copy it, then paste it here. Once you do it, you paste it under the main.py file. And this is going to be the code that we're going to be running. So again, one of the things we did last week was we taught our computer to speak, how to communicate to us. And then now the next thing we do, once we write our code, is that we're going to press this run button, this little green run button. This run button is the same as clicking on Instagram on your app, on your phone. You click on Instagram. That's what the run button is doing. It's just opening the application. So when you run it, it's going to give the most basic application you can create, which is a console app. And it doesn't really matter what it means specifically, but it is going to just spit out the text that we have written in here. And so anything that we change inside the quotation marks, so hello world, hi Jimmy. If I press the run button again, that's going to say hello world, hi Jimmy. So now we officially have this line of code communicating to us on the computer. So that's kind of our first step. And then why don't you try to go through these and then try to figure it out, okay? And then number 3 is about variables. And I want you to see if you can try to understand from here. If you have a question, let me know and I'll help you out, okay? If anyone is done with the exercise, let me know too. Then we'll kind of move forward too. You know, while they're working, I'll tell you something very fascinating that I learned. So apparently, Gen Z, the Zoomers, are not good at computers because they're so used to using iPads and iPhones that using a computer is actually a very foreign thing to them. That's so fascinating to me because every generation afterwards has been more technical than the previous one. And for the first time now, we have a generation that's less technical. So the ramification of this is that there's less people in the coding industry than we thought it would be. I thought that was just absolutely fascinating because it's almost like it's being stuck with the millennial generation. So that's amazing because, I mean, we all know computers are only becoming more relevant to us in our future. So if they're becoming more relevant, then that means the less than 2% of people who have a programming job are going to be more important. And so, you know, like I read this article, how they're saying that there's more jobs outside, there's more tech jobs outside of the tech industry than inside the tech industry. And that's really a key thing, is because every industry in the whole world, whether it be fashion, Hollywood, or whatever, they're all trying to get into tech because tech solves a lot of problems. That's kind of like the Excel example I had. So the demand is just only going to increase. And, you know, if every industry is trying to hire developers, and the demand's only going to increase, and we don't have anyone feeding it, because if the Zoomers happen to be less tech savvy, then it really creates a big opportunity. So it's really interesting. I always thought that was fascinating.
It is, because I thought they were gonna like be naturally more technically savvy because they grew up around it. Like my mom can't work a remote or her phone, but my nephew can work a phone and show us how to do it. So it's like, that's crazy to me that they can't actually.
They I even heard some stories of teachers saying that some Zoomers don't know how to type. They know how to type on the phone, and so they write the report on their phone, and then, you know, that's what they send in, and then as opposed to typing. So their typing skills are really weak. Just fascinating.
It really is.
Mm-hmm. And then with AI solving quite a lot of essays and stuff, I think it's quite dangerous in the sense that a lot of Zoomers are going to start using Chat GPT to solve problems for them. And that's like, it's, you know, and then they do less work, less thinking. And then that becomes a big issue too. So it's just a fascinating thing, because I mean, who knows what the outcome of this is, but, you know, look at how much social media has changed the world. Look at how much, like, our dating relationships have changed because of Instagram and Tinder and all that stuff. And AI is an amplification of technology and changes. And man, I don't know, just, it's a really crazy world. I think we're moving so fast, even in the tech industry. I can't keep up. And I mean, if I'm in the industry and I can't keep up, then what does that say about everyone else? It's crazy. It's really crazy. But yeah, AI specifically was wow. I just say it's wow. It's beyond my expectations.
That reminds me of a question that I had from last time. You said that the AI part of it is kind of like us advancing to using calculators.
Mm-hmm.
And then it made me wonder, like, well, isn't there something to be said for having to learn like how to do long division and like all that simple math? Like, wouldn't something be lost in coding or whatever if we just jump straight into using calculators, for example?
Yeah.
Like how are we supposed to solve problems if we don't have the ability to do those things pre-calculator as far like in coding, you know? That's kind of like stuck out to me last time.
Yeah.
But you said it's worth it. You said it's better to jump to the AI element of it.
Hello.
Right. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah.
I'm new here.
Okay. Or can you go to this link and you're starting to do work?
No,
No?
maybe.
Adios. Yeah. AI is very special because, and it's actually building on what you said. I've been using AI to help code. And one of the things that's very apparent is, at least at the current juncture, it cannot code by itself. It needs a human to filter and know what is right and what is wrong. So in our program, so we're incorporating AI coding already in our program. And what we're doing is we have to build your foundation first. You have to be able to do your long division without the calculator first, understand the mechanics of it. Then we use AI to accelerate. So the whole thing is learn the foundation, build that foundation first, then accelerate. And it's really important that this thing is come in the proper order, because if you use AI as a crutch, that becomes an issue, because then you're only limited to what AI can do. So AI should always just be allowing you to do more. Jesus Christ.
This did not happen last time. Like, what is going on? What's happening?
You know what's funny? Usually, if I run a meetup class at 3 p.m., I usually get these college students who do this. So at 7 p.m., usually I don't get anyone. So it's very surprising this time I do. All right.
Were we only supposed to do the review or the
Yeah.
information in and out?
Well, we're going to go into that right now, okay?
Okay.
All right. So. All right, so let's go start right now. I'm having a problem with number 4. Number 4, combine these problems. All right, so let's do this number 4 before we move on. So in this one, what we have is 2 different variables. So what we can do is we can total them, create a new variable called total equals, and then the name of these variables. And then if we run it, what happens? Nothing shows up, right? So what we have to do is we have to make sure to print. And once we do that, then we get the value that we're looking for. Okay? So these are the 2 different lines of code you're supposed to do. All right. So how do we get computers to listen? That's a really cool question, because just like ChatGPT, we want them to listen to us, scour the internet for us, get a cab for us, and it all starts from a single line of code. Okay, so let's do this right here. What we're going to do is we're going to show what input does. And what input does is that, let's do this. By the way, I'll show you guys the neat trick right here. Sometimes you have code and you want to keep it, but you don't want to run it anymore because it's disruptive, because in the sense that, like, if I want to add code, I don't want this to run, right? So you can do what is called commenting. Commenting your code means like removing the code, but then just keeping it for posterity. So if you're on a Mac, you would press Command ? If you're on Windows, you would press Control ? And if you do that, you highlight the code. If you do that, it can toggle the code. And when it has a hashtag in front of it, that means it's commented, and you run it and it won't show up. Okay. So, all right.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I can't really see the screen. It looks like a really small window. I don't know if it's happening for everybody else.
I
think you have to click on it.
Yeah, you have to click on it and then do like the thumbnail to make it larger.
Okay, thank you.
How do I do that? Can I pin it? Can I pin it?
Yeah, I pinned it and it got larger for me when I pinned it.
I don't know. I don't know if I can pin it. Can I pin my own or no? There.
I don't know. I think you did last time.
Unpin. See if that works. Okay. Oh, I thought it was because my screen was too small. Okay, so input. So that's the next statement we're going to learn. Input, what it does is it's going to ask the user for something, and then whatever the user types in is going to store it into the name variable. And then we can have that data available to us. So if we want to do something with it, we can, store it and manipulate it and whatever. So I'm going to do this. So let's say we run our program, and let's say we run it, and who's my favorite singer? I don't know, The Weeknd, something, right? And so if I press enter after typing it in inside the console, you press enter, and guess what it does? So line 2, it prints name. Why does that do that? Anyone know why it does that?
Because it's a string, it's in the quotations.
Bingo, yes. And this is probably the most important concept you guys should learn today. What is in quotation marks is going to be printed literally. When it does not have a quotation marks, it's going to be printing the variable value. And so because of that, line 2 is going to print the name literally in terms of the word. And then line 3 is going to print whatever I typed into here. And then it's going to be boom, Dr. Dre. So that's how this works. So why don't you go and create this, and when you get to line 5, or when you finish line 5, you don't have to work on it. I just want to show you why it's funny. But when you get here, then let me know, put it into the chat. Yes, very good, Jimmy. So on number 5, Jimmy was saying, is it funny because they're treating them as strings and appending them? That's exactly the very funny part about coding. So what we're going to learn very soon is there's data types, and that's going to affect how we add things together. Very intuitive though. If anyone else is done, let me know. All right. Okay. Seems like people are getting through. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna get moving. So, okay, exactly like Jimmy said, what's happening is in number 5 is you're getting 2 strings to add to each other. So what is very unique about coding is that there are different data types. And if you have a string, which is text, and you have integers, which are numbers, they're treated very differently. Because if you add 2 strings together, like blackboard, you get blackboard. But if you get like 4 plus 2, that equals 6. So the way we add in coding depends on the data type that we have. And so there are many different data types, but the two that we really care about is just strings and integers. Because once we master that, this is one of the ground, they call it one of the most important, I don't know what they call it. I think it's called primitive data types. But there's one of the most important data types out there because we use it all the time. Okay. So I want to ask you guys this question. Theater equals AMC theater. What data type is this? Anyone want to say?
String.
Perfect. Height equals 52. What is this?
Integer.
Right. Weight equals 251 pounds. What is this?
String.
Oh, why'd you say that?
Because of the LBS, the pounds.
Right, very good. And then last one, speed equals 85.
I'm going to say string because it's in quotations.
Ah, there we go. Good work. Yes, exactly. So if you're in quotations, then that's the giveaway for being a string. If it doesn't, like here, it's an integer. So that kind of, again, differentiates the difference between the two data types. And you just have to be very mindful of the data type we're using so that we can always treat them appropriately. So that's the whole big thing, right? So in our last exercise, this is what happened. Kind of like what Jimmy said, there you're adding 2 variables or strings, they're not integers. So then the adding was very different. But unfortunately, just like how water can be turned into steam, we can turn data types into each other as well. So if we do this, we can make strings add up to integers of this. So we can get this, even though right now this code is doing this. Okay, so let's see how do we do that. So let's take a look. This. Let's put this in our code. So again, if we want to comment it, for me, I'm on a Mac, so it's command ? And I can get rid of it, which is nice because now I have a fresh, clean sheet of code while having the other stuff for reference. So if I run this, I get the very strange behavior, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what do? We want to convert our strings into integers. And we do that by writing int and parentheses and then close parentheses. It's very important that what we're doing is we open, then close it around the variable we want to convert into integer. So now we want to do this as well for second add-in. So int, parentheses, close parentheses. And so what this is going to do is going to convert these 2 variables that originally are strings into integers. So the big thing here is that anything that comes from an input is a string, even if it's a number, because the computer just says, this is what the user said. I don't know if it's a number or anything. I'm just going to tell you right now, this is what the user said. And even though, and similar to how here, we have a scenario where the number 85 looks like it's an integer number, but it actually is still a string. So no matter what you type into the input, the user over here, you're always going to be returning a string. So that means that if we want to add it the way we expect to add it, we have to cast these variables into integers. So now if we add 1, 2 plus 3, 4, it gives us the exact calculation we're looking for. And that's coding. Okay. So why don't you guys continue on and then let me know if you guys get stuck on anything. Good work. Did you have any questions? Very good. Wow, guys are good. Do you have any questions, Mary?
So one question is that sometimes, well, I was looking at some documentation, and sometimes they use like a F in a single quote versus the double quotes that we are using. Are we going to go over that?
F, you're saying F string? Let me see.
Yeah.
How do you do it? I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of stuff in coding, so it's very easy to lose track of how all this stuff works.
Okay.
All right, F string is a new important way. Okay, got it. Perfect. Oh, okay, this is similar to, oh, it sounds like I saw a, oh, that's cool. All right, so let's take a look at this. All right. So let's imagine. All right, so let's imagine we had a variable called, let's think about it. I don't know. Concert tickets sold equals 18,000 whatever, 312, right? And we wanted to print out something like this. So this is the message equals concert tickets. So we wanted to print, wait, let me do this a little better. All right. So let's say we wanted to print out something like Taylor Swift sold 18,312 tickets tonight. Okay. So this is the final message that we wanted to print. Okay. And what it is we have this variable. So now it becomes, how do we add it together so we can do this, right? So the conventional way, which I taught you guys, is this, is Taylor Swift sold plus TR. We got to cast it to a string because it's an integer. Concert tickets sold plus tickets tonight. You print the message, and that should give us what we're looking for. Okay, so let me open this a little bit wider. Okay, so this is what we're trying to do. Taylor Swift sold 18,312 tickets tonight, which is what we did here. And this is how I have been teaching you guys how to do it. So one of the wonderful things about coding, and also terrible for new coders, is that oftentimes there are many ways to do the same thing. There are many ways to do the same thing, and sometimes it's because we have an original way, and then we're like, oh, we do this so often. How can we do it so that it's more easy to see and more easy to, understand what's going on? So let me even make this a little bit more complicated. Sold out in streak equals 18. So what if I change this to say Taylor Swift sold 18,312 tickets tonight? That is a sell out. That is an 18 concert sellout streak. Okay, so I'm gonna make this a little bit more complicated. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add this second sentence. So that is an plus str sold out streak plus concert sell out streak. Okay, so this is the new sentence and it works. Okay, so cool. So this is the thing, right? Okay, what's the problem with this? The problem with this is a lot of code. That's the problem. And it's also kind of difficult to visualize what this thing is really saying. So what we can do now with this handy dandy let's comment this out. Handy dandy F string is that we can say message equals F, and then we put a quotation mark. It really doesn't matter if it's single quotes or double quotes. All it matters is that you have the quotations, or whether it's single quotes or double quotes. And then now we're going to write our message now. Okay. So Taylor Swift sold. Now, last time we ended the quotation mark, added the str, and then put the variable in, and then reopen the quotation mark. That was something we did last time. All this stuff right here. But with the F string, which is a lot sexier and more sleek, now what we're doing is we have the curly brace, the variable name, then we continue on. Tickets tonight. That is and then the variable name again, sold out streak. Concert sell out streak. So as you can tell, make sure this works. Wait, no, it works. Okay. So as you can tell, this is just visually easier to understand what the final string is doing, because instead of having all this extra plus and quotation marks and all that stuff, you just know that anytime you see the curly brace, it's inserting the variable into the string. And so now you can read it in a way that's a lot more readable to the coder. Taylor Swift sold, concert tickets sold, tickets tonight. That is in sold out streak, concert sellout streak, right? So now very easy to understand what that is doing, all because of the F string. And so actually, this is the first time I saw F string in Python. I just learned it in C# not too long ago. So this is pretty new, and it seems like this is going to be a very common thing for all languages. It seems like they're uniting it because C# has it and now Python has it. So now pretty sweet. I think it's awesome. So it just kind of simplifies the code, and that's really what it is doing. Does that make sense? Mary, does that make sense?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, cool.
And then so with the F string, I was like testing it out in our first exercise. And I found that you need a single quote when like the string has like double quotes inside of it.
Sorry, say it again.
Sometimes you'll need like a single quote if like the string has double quotes inside of it. I'll copy.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So you're saying something like
the president equals Abe Lincoln example.
Right. So are you saying something like, so let's say that this was the message we want to say, and it says something like, Taylor says, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So yeah, you're absolutely right. So again, I don't want to complicate it with you, but so I'll make it the simple version first, and then I'll show you the complicated version. But what it is that you're right. If we want to have quotation marks, it becomes kind of inception in a way, because like, how do you put in quotation marks if you're using quotation marks, right? Because then you make a quotation mark and it ends the string. So what you do, so if you say Taylor says, yeah, right? So we want to do the quotation marks. We have to one way of doing it is switching this to single quotes, like you said. Now that allows us to do the quotation marks, and it'll just treat it like text. And this should work. Yeah, right? That's awesome. Oh, wait, no, that's two. Okay, there. Close that. All right, there we go. So now that should work as you expect. So now let's say that you want to do it, complicate your life and make it another way. And again, I mean, generally, I don't like to tell you guys this because then it makes it too confusing. So this is back to the original.
Yeah.
So another way to do it, and again, I would completely ignore this if it's going to add too much complication to your brain, is you can have what is called an escape character.
Oh, forward or slash or something.
There we go. Yeah. So then what it does is the escape character says, okay, we're not going to treat this symbol, the quotation mark, the way we're expecting it to be. We have a secret code that's going to do something else different. So now this should do the same thing. And so now you still have the same quotation marks on the outside and it prints in here, but now this is a signal to the computer that don't treat this quotation mark as a normal one, just treat it like a text. So that's how it does it. That make sense? Cool. Any other questions, guys? Anyone have any questions about anything? It doesn't even have to be about this coding lesson specifically. It can even be about, can be about anything. Any last questions before we end the class today?
Are you gonna do more free classes?
No, this is the last one. I'll tell you what the problem with these free classes is. A lot of people miss the first one or they miss a chain. And then it becomes difficult. So like people on the third one will be like, I didn't take the first two. And then this is like, I was like, oh, forget it. It's too hard for you guys to maintain the schedule, or else I would have been chaining them up. But unfortunately, it is very difficult. So that's why if you guys are really interested, my suggestion is to book a free class. That's the best way to do it. You can actually see what it's like to work in the school, Parkour Robot. So you click on that link and you can actually book a free class. And you can just, again, it's just what it is that you'll go through the class and you'll have to see the other students working. And the real powerful thing is seeing that when you see other people working with you, it's a lot easier to keep it up and keep it consistent, because that's the one thing about coding. It's like learning a language. You need to kind of keep that consistency, and having a class is really a big hack in doing that. So, and then you get to see what other people are working on. So one of the things that we haven't really updated the marketing site to say that yet, but one of the exciting things that you'll actually be able to see is, one, some students are working on their own self-track where they're working on stuff and learning, how to do web development, and others are actually doing a consulting job. So what we do is that we train you guys to become, learn how to code, and then towards the end of your, of your learning, we'll actually get you a consulting job and you'll work as a consultant for us. So you'll get paid to be learning in class with us. So if you were to book a class, you'd actually be able to talk to students who are getting paid while they're in class, because they're doing real consulting work. What they're doing is they're helping to migrate. Let me actually show you right now. So what they're doing right now is they're helping to update this site, which is makeup. I don't know, makeup. I don't know anything about makeup. So it's like makeup e-commerce site.
Skincare.
Skincare. There you go. There we go. Yeah. So I'm talking out of my league here, but yeah, these guys are dealing with a website that is extremely difficult to manage and very old. And so they wanted to do something where they are using something a lot fresher, a lot newer, and a lot cleaner. So that's what they're doing. And you can get all this, stuff that I don't know what you use it for, but I'm sure it's important in some way. And so what is the really magical part about this is that my students have never been trained in the technology you're using in consulting. And what it is, again, we don't really care about the technology we're teaching. We're teaching you guys Django, but it really doesn't matter, because once you master and have a good foundation, you can learn whatever you want. So that's why our students are doing video games, they're doing iPhone apps, because once you master coding, you really can just go anywhere you want. And so they are working on an e-commerce site using a technology that they've never used, because their abilities are super strong. And so that's what we want to train you guys to be, just all around, like Navy SEALs who can adapt to any environment, any situation. And so that turned out really well for you guys, because if you guys want to do your own app, you guys want to work, doing data analytics, all that stuff, you can use all that and use coding to just use that, fuse it together to create the life that you want. And so that's why one of the things we love to ask when we're talking to you is always, what's your dream job? What's your goal? And the real big point is you want to kind of conceptualize and be clear. What is it that's important to me? What is it I want? What does my life look like? And when you can do that, and then you start to add value to yourself using a skill set that is in demand, then you can start to cultivate that type of life. And so that's why we have students who are driving their dream car, they're buying houses, all these things, and it all just comes from having a skill set that's very valuable. Because ultimately, in the end, the most valuable thing you can do for yourself is invest in yourself. Invest in yourself and learn something, because that's going to make you become much more valuable than stocks, real estate, or crypto. That stuff, it's cyclical. You can't really predict it. It's not as valuable as getting a skill set that nobody can steal from you, because that is such a valuable thing that will always continually pay off. And so that's why we have students who double their salary purely just by saying, I can code, because that makes them an elite part of their industry. So one of our students, she's a marketer. She said, I can code, and boom, immediately companies are fighting for her services. And so I always like to give this analogy. Imagine you have a marketer with 3 years of experience versus one with 15 years of experience. The only difference is the one with 3 years of experience can code. Who do you think you're going to hire? And so when you look at it like that, you can see that coding, it becomes this hack. It allows you to jump 12 years of work experience, because coding is such an elite skill that when you know how to do marketing, then you know how to do coding, that puts you in the top 1%, because there's not many marketers who can code. So when you guys have both ends of the spectrum, it really amplifies really well. And that's why it's very significant when I say that most of the coding jobs are now outside of the tech industry, because tech industry only services a small part of what coding can be. So it's a great way to change your life and make you something that you want to be. And it's really fun and allows you to be creative in a way that you really can't imagine. So that's what I think it is. I think it's amazing. And I really hope you guys can book a class and join us and see how it is. At the very worst, you get to see what it's like to be in a class. It costs nothing to you guys. All we do is kind of talk, and then you get to code a little bit and see how it works. And one exciting thing about it, again, is that it's very different than a normal traditional university. So if you are someone who is intimidated by coding or kind of struggle with coding, this is something that's a little bit different, a little bit fresher. So you can kind of see like, oh, let's see how this works compared to what I experienced in university. So that's the little spiel. We really love helping you guys and working you guys out. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. And I think that's the end of class. All right, very good. Any other questions before we end this tonight?
What about other languages, maybe?
Learning programming languages?
Well, yeah, like C# or whatever. Would you do classes on those too?
So once you want me to do a class on Meetup?
Yeah, I don't know.
So I'll tell you one thing about. Yep, I'm gonna put the post up of the video after I get this thing saved. So the one thing about languages you have to understand is they work differently than you think. So if you were to ask me how many languages do I know, I could say like all of them. And the thing is, once you get the fundamentals down, then it really doesn't matter about how many languages you know or if you know more languages or not. And so why is that relevant? Because that's why in our program, we actually only teach one language or two languages, Python and JavaScript. But it really doesn't matter, because once you master that, then you can learn them all. So it's not really relevant about how many languages you know. With that said, the reason I wouldn't teach C# in a C# class is because C# is more complicated. So what is more important is you guys get depth and not breadth. Because breadth means like, okay, let's learn a lot of languages. The problem with that when you do it really quickly is it confuses your brain, because it's difficult to kind of manage what is each language asking you to do. So what you really want to have is really deep roots like a redwood tree, something that you can't pull up. And when you have that stable foundation, then it's a lot easier to learn a new language. So my students, when they finally learned their second language, which is JavaScript. Well, so first of all, most students, you can read it on all the boards. One of the biggest complaints is they get confused about learning multiple languages. So they don't know how to sort out Java versus C# and all that stuff. And that's how traditional universities teach. But then my students, when they learn JavaScript, because I wait a long time before they get to JavaScript, by the time they learn JavaScript, they're like, this wasn't even a speed bump. It was just cake because their fundamentals are really strong. And so again, going back to the consulting thing, that's one of the reasons why I can bill $200-300 an hour for technology I'd never used in a language I never used, because I can just pick it up really quickly. And so that's the much more important skill to learn, is having those deep roots and deep fundamental understanding so that you can do anything. And so if you were to learn C#, it's more complicated, and then it ends up confusing your brain. So the best thing to do is to find the most simple and powerful language. And for us, that avenue is Python. Master that. And then if you want to learn C#, it would take you literally just minutes. Like it doesn't take you that long. You'll just be just tapping along, and then you'll be able to go really quickly. So that ends up becoming a non-issue. So we can basically effectively eliminate all that stuff. And I'll tell you why I don't teach JavaScript as well, because I ran into this problem, is that JavaScript requires people to understand HTML. And so because of that, it's so many prereqs. And so the easiest one I found was just Python, because there's no prereqs. We can go directly into coding, and you go directly into the logic, which is the most important part, is understanding how computers work. So that's why, again, this world is going to separate. So it's always a spectrum of people in terms of their technical abilities. And there's going to be people who are not technical but can barely use a computer, and there's going to be people who can maximize what a computer can do. So if you are, really good at computers, understand how computers work, and you can do all sorts of things like cloud configuration, all that stuff, and you understand AI, that puts you at the forefront. And as AI starts to grow in significance, because it will grow, because it's barely even started, I can tell you that right now, the people at the forefront of technology are going to amplify even more. So they're going to be even more important, even more powerful, because they can leverage things through AI that other people cannot. And so you want to be in that tight circle, because that puts you in a really valuable place, because then everyone wants to use you, because you can do things other people can't do. So like whether you do real estate or whatever, like I think someone was doing real estate appraisals. Man, real estate is ripe for the taking of technical.
Heck yeah, I was training in real estate too. I have an idea for something I would want to learn how to code, because it's like I can't believe that no one's done this yet.
And see, I'll tell you something that is really significant about that. If I were to go into creating a real estate application, the hard part is I don't know anything about real estate. I know zero about real estate. But let's say like somebody who does appraisals, does it all the time, they know the appraisal side. Then they know the coding side. And what you got to understand is code can't solve everything. It can only solve some problems extremely well. So when you know the two ends of the spectrum, you know what both sides can do, what this wants and what code can do, then you can start to cultivate an application that best suits technology. Technology is not a solve all problems thing. This is why we have mentors in the classes, so you can ask us questions. We don't have the ability to solve the problem in the sense that we can't remove the human part yet. So the human part of what technology cannot do is something that only person with the wisdom of understanding that field will really understand. So if you're in appraisals and you know what technology can do, you can create the perfect application that leverages what technology does well while solving annoying appraisal problems. So that's really the power of what your knowledge of what you guys have and can do, that's going to separate you from all the other just coders in the world. So it's really exciting, because when you guys bring in your guys' ideas and your viewpoints into the world, it's going to change the world, because it's basically bringing in fresh ideas that coders who don't have experience in your industry will never understand how to do.
I'm excited about it for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Are there machine learning and AI projects currently going on? I know you showed the website, which is using Django and Python.
Mhm.
Are there like any machine learning and AI projects going on?
What do you mean going on, like in the world?
And no, I guess the student groups that you were referring to, like
Oh,
projects.
yeah. We're not teaching machine learning or AI right now.
Okay.
I'll tell you why. Right now, when it comes to data, machine learning, and that type of those type of jobs, there's actually a lot fewer than you would think. There's not nearly as many of those jobs as you can think. And when companies go through cuts, they're the first one to get cut. I know this because my friend is a technical, was he tech software engineering manager at SoundCloud, and he was the manager for the data analytics team. And the difficult part about data analytics and machine learning and all that stuff is that when they have cuts, they look at, okay, just imagine you're the manager, right? You're the director and you have to make cuts. Now you have two groups. One group that is directly impacting the features on SoundCloud and what the users use. Another group is doing analytics on this group's work. And you have to make budget cuts. Who are you going to cut? This team? You cut this team, then you don't have anything at all.
Yeah.
Right? What are they going to analyze? And so that comes just to the order of importance. Because fundamentally, you need the builders, and then the analytics can support that. But this is always going to be the first to go first. And also, it's important to understand is that these high-end machine learning people, they're extremely expensive. And you can hire cheap $60,000 to $70,000 data analytic people who are getting about 60 to 80% of the effectiveness of these guys. So these guys are effective. It's true. We're not going to argue about that. But there are only like the last 20 to 30% of the juice. And the real main juice is still from the primary data analytic people who are cheap. So then that ends up becoming this, creates an industry that's very unique in the sense that machine learning people, there's very few jobs. So then what happens? They only hire people with PhDs.
Okay.
Because there's few jobs and PhDs. If we're gonna just limit it to this few people, then you might as well get creme de la creme, right? Because there's so few people in there anyways. So then you end up getting just the PhDs. So then it's kind of elbows out everyone else. And this is a big company. So this is a very huge company that's known by everybody. So if a big company is struggling to keep their data analytics team, which they just wiped it out, then what does that tell you about small companies who can't afford to hire machine learning people? So now we have less jobs because the jobs are only in the big companies. They only have a few, and they're first to get cut. And then everyone else, they can't even afford them to begin with. So they're not even in the conversation of hiring a machine learning data analytics person. So that's why we don't incorporate into our program. We just have not found it to justify the promise that everyone thinks it is. It's not nearly as promising as we think it is. So it's unfortunate. But fact of the matter is, somebody making $60,000, $70,000 can give you 60 to 80% of the analytics you need. I mean, that's like refining the difference between raising your prices by $1 or $2, and you need to have mass number of you know, I don't know, it just doesn't compute. And so if big companies are struggling to have these data analytic people, then I can guarantee you that the small companies are not even considering it. And your best avenue to enter the market is through a small company.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. But I'll tell you this, if you know analytics and you know coding, that puts you already in a very special class, because then you can do things that any other people cannot do. So like a very easy example is, like, let's say you needed to like get, let's say you need to go and test out what is the viability of their product in the Gen Z market, right? And so what you can do is you can go and constantly pull data from the Census Bureau, very updated, and actually constantly have a good track of how many people are in this class of group of people. Where are they? And then you can track where they're going and so on and so forth. So you can do things that other analysts cannot because you have access to the web and all the huge amount of data that's available to people who can access the web for free. Whereas if you're just a normal analyst and you're only using Excel, you're very limited because you can only deal with 1,000 rows. Whereas if you can go and analyze stuff directly on a database, then you have access to infinite amount of rows. So one of my students, Airbnb, they call it the self-serving data culture. What that means is that they say this. So, most of the time people analysts are working in Excel sheets. It's only 1,000 rows. You can't update it that quickly. But Airbnb, and because he can code, Airbnb says, all right, you have access to our data. Tell us something that we need to know. And so he just runs through the data constantly, all through millions of rows of information to try to sort out what's going on, how to increase their bottom line. And that is far more valuable than someone that can only work in Excel, because then they can only download 1,000 rows, manipulate that, very limited. Whereas he's going through millions of rows, can tell you worldwide information and tell you how to optimize your company's strategy. Cool. Any other questions? Solidity for smart contracts. I actually don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about that. Is that like the crypto stuff? Yeah, I don't know anything about smart contracts. Are still very interesting. I felt crypto, and even though I'm a big believer in it, so believe me, I'm a pro crypto guy. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I think crypto is kind of not really working out. They haven't found a way to make it work, and that's a shame because I love it. I love the concept of something that's controlled not by the government. I'm all pro that stuff, but the fact of the matter is it's not as quick and cheap as it should be. And I mean, the obvious problem is that these things keep getting bigger and bigger, and the ledger becomes more and more difficult to manage. So they have a big glaring problem in front of them that they need to solve. Cool. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, best to everyone. If you guys have any questions, the last call right now. And I encourage you guys to book a free class, see what it's like. You guys get to see if this is something you like. That's a big thing that I always encourage people just to see if you like it. That's always the first thing. Just see if you like it, because if you don't like it, then there's no sense in you learning it. But it is honestly the number one skill you can learn today. It's something that helps you amplify your skill set to the nth degree, and it really will change your life. Let me tell you, these students, they always look back and they can't believe how much their life has changed purely by learning how to code, because this coding skill is such in demand in the industries and all industries. And so that really is going to set you apart and give you the life that you want. So if you guys want to get paid well, work remotely, all this stuff, this is really the best avenue to it. And for me, one of the things I love to do was get time. So that's how I got I would work 9 months of the year and get 3 months off. And it really is just through leveraging yourself through a skill set that is hugely in demand. Okay. So best to you guys. Have a good night, and really proud of you guys for all coming out. You guys could have been watching TV, but you guys really decided to change your life and look into it. And that's awesome. So best to you guys, and have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care.